Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Mark Givler. Got Kevin Noon here. Instant reaction edition today. Buckeyes land three-star safety Leroy Roker out of Fort Myers, Florida. That one's kind of been brewing, I guess, the last few weeks. It's not a guy who's maybe been front and center for the fans over the entire cycle. It's kind of a later developing situation there with the Buckeyes. He did make his official visit over the weekend, so things move very quickly from there. Roker announces his commitment to Ohio State this afternoon. Kevin, obviously, star rankings, three-star guy, Florida guy. Looked like maybe Iowa was the presumed favorite. Miami was also in there. What do you think? What are you thinking here? I know there's going to be some initial rolling of the eyes of the star rankings and everything else, but this is a guy that they've kind of turned the heat up on the last few weeks and we're able to close on.
Yeah, exactly. You look at his national ranking in the composite and it's 1,285, and you look, he's had 5 offers, but 3 of them were Ohio State, Iowa, and Miami. Not as concerned about Old Dominion and South Dakota. Apologies to both, but obviously some programs were starting to come on. Certainly Iowa, in terms of the defense that is played at Iowa. I mean, Iowa saw something there. Ohio State saw something there. I think that it's a good get because, again, you play a 4-2-5 system. A lot of the time you have 3 safeties as part of that 5. So you're going to need to bolster up the ranks there as some of your guys are getting to be a little bit older. Josh Proctor's been there long enough to be Dr. Proctor. And then you've got Lathan Ransom, who's been there a long time, Cam Martinez. You need to start putting some names into the hopper right now. And I think that that Leroy Roker is going to be somebody who fits a need. I mean, is he going to be somebody who's going to step in immediately? Probably not. But we're still waiting to see if guys like Kai Stokes come around, another Floridian, when we talk about things. So I'm very intrigued by this prospect. Haven't had as much of a time to study him yet, but I have a feeling I'm going to get some knowledge dropped on me as we watch his tape here in a second.
Yeah. Before we get into that, let's we'll get to the tape here in 1 minute. So Leroy's a really good basketball player. He's a point guard on the basketball floor. So I think this is one of those kids who maybe had the hoop dreams early in his high school career and is now maybe realizing that being a 6'1" point guard is kind of a tough path to the NBA. Being a 6'1" athletic defensive back is kind of what everyone's looking for. So this is going to be an interesting one that we look back on in 3 or 4 years. There's going to be a lot of people who probably are questioning this, but this is not that much different of a profile than what we've seen from some guys who have gone on to have really good careers at Ohio State in the secondary. So I'm kind of reserving my thoughts a little bit. I know everyone wants me to give a hot take one way or the other, whether I love it, this is the greatest offer in the world, or that, they reached here. I want to let this one play out a little bit. I'm intrigued by the upside, the athletic upside here. I'm intrigued by the idea that all of a sudden Miami, all of a sudden Ohio State, all of a sudden Iowa, who has quietly been one of the best producers of safeties and defensive backs in the country over the last 10 or 20 years, have all of a sudden started getting interested here. And I also know that Ohio State had several Ohio guys who are more highly ranked in their back pocket. If they wanted to make a move there, they could have, and they chose Roker instead of, doing the big push for a Reggie Powers or a Terrion Nichols, who I know they've stayed in contact with. So this is interesting to me. I'm leaning toward the benefit of the doubt here because, again, I like these basketball guys in the secondary. I'm certainly not going. Here comes the Mark said he's the next Malik Hooker. I'm certainly not claiming he's going to be the next Malik Hooker. But Malik Hooker was a basketball player who eventually decided, football's probably my path. 3-star kid, not a lot of offers, certainly not a lot of big offers. And they've had success with guys like this in recent years and really going all the way back to Tressel. So this kid fits a similar profile, and let's throw on the tape and see what we got. So yeah, he plays running back too. I guess I should have thrown that out there.
Yeah, I was
He's
gonna
a
say I just
running
pulled it
back
out.
athlete at high school, but yeah, so he's a running back DB point guard. So he's a versatile athlete. There we go. There he's got some defense. But yeah, he just a great athlete. You see him running away there at running back. Here's another one. We're gonna watch the breakaway speed. Right there, he's gonna hit the seam, and that's gonna be that. So he's got this high athletic upside. You're playing three safeties a lot. There's a lot of intrigue here for me. You know, how physical is he going to be? I mean, that's a great play in space. That's coming up and making a tackle in space, kind of running the alley there. We're going to get through some of this running back film here first, because while it is a good measure of his athleticism, what we really want to see is the defensive stuff. But you see there, I mean, he's certainly willing to tackle. He's certainly there's playing the middle field as a safety. We've seen him in corner. That was kind of a gift, but again, the elusiveness to kind of get away there and make something happen from it. Again, 6'1", about 175, so he's still got to fill out. Again, we're going to get stuck with more running back here, but just a really good run and jump athlete. I'm actually going to go watch his basketball film here at some point later if I can find it and kind of see what I can get from there, because I know basketball film's always actually kind of cool to see. You got a really good idea for someone's athleticism. I always liked watching like Garrett Wilson when he was playing basketball, and there are other linebacker targets, I guess, were always interesting. But again, physical kid there, getting out front, leading the way as a blocker, but versatile on the defensive side. And that, we've seen him play. You can play outside corner. We've seen him play in the slot. We've seen him play as more of a traditional safety. So I think, given the nature of the Ohio State defense and kind of what they do with some of these guys like Styles and Proctor and even Lathan Ransom to an extent, you want guys who can do multiple things in the secondary and not just this guy's an outside corner or this guy's a slot corner. You want guys who you can move around based on matchups, based on just your own flexibility. I mean, it's really become a thing in the Ohio State secondary where, we used to talk about this with offensive line, where it was, let's get our 5 best offensive linemen on the field. And you would cut, maybe a tackle would have to play guard, whatever. This has kind of become the thing where maybe a corner's got to play safety, or, maybe a safety's got to play kind of in the slot and play nickel. And it's getting your 5 best defensive backs on the field. They've had to shuffle guys around to do that, to get Proctor and Ransom on the field together. They've had to move, they've had to change positions. So I like the versatility. I like the athletic upside. I'm never upset when they take multi-sport athletes. I think if you can excel at 2 or 3 different things at the high school level, at a high level, it bodes very well for your ability to learn things at the college level. If you can do basketball and football they both require athleticism, but they require such different types of skill and athleticism that if you can effectively do both, I think it just bodes very well for getting coached up at the next level and learning multiple positions as like safety, corner, slot. So, Kevin, I know we're used to these guys. We're used to having covered them for like 2 years, and then they commit somewhere, and we have to talk about their beginnings and origins and everything like that. This kid's been on the radar not that long, just been several weeks here, and that's it. But what did you see there, kind of going through the film, that you liked, or is this what they needed to do at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that you're moving in on him right now, and I know that we're 2 months and 9 days or whatever away from the early signing period, and people are going to be like, well, is this because, they missed out on this guy or missed out on that guy? Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't necessarily go and fill your class with, everybody's a 5-star, but I think that there's a lot to what you said about, there were in-state options, and this is the decision that they wanted to make. I mean, it's a lot easier to take the in-state guy who wanted to be an Ohio State Buckeye probably for all of his life, and you go elsewhere because you see something out of a kid. And you talk about maybe about his physicality. He doesn't have to be the thumper that, talking about another young safety that we haven't seen yet, but from the previous class, Jayvan Boggs, who is an absolute assassin out there. They're, the 3 roles, the adjuster and the boundary and everything else. They've all have very specific roles that they have to fill. That doesn't mean that you want to have somebody who's going to lay some tackles, but this is a kid that is a multi-sport guy, certainly playing both ways at his high school down in Fort Myers. I think there's a lot to like there, and I'll be interested to see more footage. That was his junior year footage. He did have some senior clips, but this was such breaking news. We never had a chance to put them all together, so we had to go for like the longest run of video we could find.
Yeah, and so again, senior film's been big here. I know they've been down to see him, so they did their homework here. This isn't my way of saying, well, you just can't criticize anything they do. That's not what I'm saying. But they have other guys they could have made this push for and didn't. So clearly they've kind of made their choice based on what's available to them at this point. Certainly we know if KJ Bolden had committed, probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now on any defensive backs. But they had some other options available. This is the guy they're picking. Again, these guys are, sometimes you get a late riser. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs had Georgia Tech, and that was about it at this point of his senior year. So you have these guys that do this. I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be that guy, but there is something to be said for players who are late bloomers who get these big offers late. So he was on his way to doing that. So I'm keeping an open mind to this. And like I said, I always, if you tell me really good basketball player and they're like a defensive back or a receiver, or even a tight end, I'm automatically interested. So I'm liking the physical profile, and then we'll see where the rest of the season goes for him, and we'll get to know him even more here in the next couple months. Impact on the class. I think they're probably just about done in the secondary right now. Now, if someone has a change of heart out there, like KJ Bolden, for example, we just talked about, Ohio State's not going to say no to a situation like that. Because if that costs you a kid, it costs you a kid. Like, it just, hey, if someone wants to leave the class because of that, whatever. But outside of that, I am not, just from talking to people here the last hour or two since this broke, I'm not getting the sense they're in a huge hurry to go out there and get another defensive back, unless it's a guy they really, really like. So unless it's like one of those guys that you don't even factor into the numbers. It's KJ Bolden at the end of the cycle. It's a JoJo Trader caliber athlete. That's my sense. We'll see if that changes at all here in the next month or two. Minds can change, numbers can change, guys can transfer, guys can get injured, guys can decommit, guys can not have good senior seasons, guys can have great senior seasons, guys can go on a playoff run and put together 4 weeks of tape that you can't believe against playoff teams. So a lot can change, but just the sense, today's snapshot I'm getting is that Ohio State could be done in the secondary. Roker was actually the second Florida commit of the week. The Buckeyes got Jayvan Boggs out of Cocoa, Florida, a very familiar program to Ohio State fans. Not always like the fondest of memories there, but with Cedric Hawkins now in the program, and I think there's some different people at Cocoa now, and so I think some relationships have obviously been repaired there. But that was a huge commitment for them in 2025. I'm going to kind of issue not a retraction, but maybe not even an apology. But this kid, I saw him at camp in the summer, Boggs, and he was good. Like, he caught everything, like routes were good, was not like super explosive, did not run a great 40 by any stretch. I think he was like up in the 4.7s in the 40. And so I thought after that, I'm like, probably wait and see his film. They actually offered him that week. I was like, wow, I thought maybe they'd wait for the junior film. It's probably a good thing they didn't. He has had an unbelievable junior season. And so you have to, like, whatever Hartline saw that day at camp, I tip my hat to him, because 9 out of 10 times I'm like, yes, you need to offer that kid. And, I completely agree with timing and everything. This was like a 1 out of 10. We're like, maybe you wait till your junior season. Hartline didn't want to do that. And I think he was right. I think I was wrong about the timing, because if they waited now, who knows what that would have meant, because he has busted up Aquinas. He's busted up some of the best teams in Florida already. He's had an unbelievable junior season. The Jackson Smith and Jigba comparisons, I'm a little scared of. I saw Jackson in kind of the same setting, and I was very Yes, this kid's amazing. I was one of the first people to say this was the best receiver in that class, in that Ohio State group. Everyone, Julian Fleming was number 1 in the country on ESPN. So I was kind of ahead of the curve on Jackson. I was not ahead of the curve here. I'm still not sure he's quite that explosive. Jackson may not be a 4.3 40 guy, but the way he gets out of his cuts, the way he can change direction is just incredible. I think Boggs has a little bit to go before we put him in that light, but this is just a highly productive player who is dominating some fantastic competition, and this is turning into a must get for them. And so they've locked him up early. I think this is huge. Kevin, just before we go to any video you might have, let's get your thoughts on Boggs and just the Hartline machine keeping rolling here.
Yeah. I mean, a player that's originally from Dayton. So, I mean, there's the tie to the state of Ohio. I mean, we think about Florida recruiters for the class of 25, and I think the first name that comes to mind is Nashawn Montgomery. And, Jayvan Boggs. I keep wanting to say Jayvan, but that's not proper. It's Jayvan Boggs. He's underrated, I think, by the recruiting services as a 3-star. I mean, maybe they have not had a chance to go through what he's done here in his junior season. The film that we're going to show here in a minute is from his sophomore season, so we may not have everything quite as explosive, but getting in early, Ohio State has done a good job of identifying players like that, being the first one to get in on somebody, and that certainly has a lot to do with some of the successes they have. Now, with the kid being from Dayton, I'm sure there's always kind of been, even though he left when he was 6, so I don't really remember how many memories I have, 6 and earlier, but I think it's a pretty big get, especially when you look at Ohio State and it's selecting receivers more so than recruiting, it seems like these years.
Yeah, I mean, he just continues to pick and choose kind of who he wants. He's definitely not a 3-star. He's definitely at least a 4-star kid. My sense would be, I can't speak for everyone who's doing this for all the different networks, but my sense would be they probably saw him in the spring or summer at a camp and came to the similar conclusion I did, which was really good hands, good route runner, nothing like freaky, like athleticism, not 6'4", not 4'3". Let's just put the 3-star label on him, and we'll see what the updated rankings look like. I would imagine that they're going to move him up.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually can see where that would happen. If your last evaluation of him was May or June or April, he's not like a Jamie French or a Jeremiah Smith, for an Ohio State reference, of someone who you almost don't even need to see them work out. You look at Jeremiah Smith and you're like, well, that's exactly what a 5-star receiver should look like, as long as he can actually catch a football and walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, he just has a look to him when you watch him, when you see him physically, when you watch him run before he actually does anything on a football field. That's not really where Boggs leaps out to you. He is obviously much more of a gamer, which, is that Jackson Smith and Jigba? I mean, that's a very high bar. I'll throw out another guy who I think Ohio State fans should love if this guy turns out, if Boggs turns out to be this good. KJ Hill. I mean, KJ Hill caught a million passes at Ohio State, was a really good player for a really long time at Ohio State, had an NFL career, not particularly big one, but had a career in the NFL. I mean, maybe if he's somewhere in between those two, I think you got to be happy with that, right? If he's somewhere between KJ Hill and Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, KJ Hill, 201 receptions at Ohio State, 20 touchdowns, 2,332 yards, according to Wikipedia. So I'm assuming that's correct. But yeah, I mean, I think that if he fits somewhere in that window between the two of them, that's a huge get. But then again, with the recruiting that Ohio State's done at wide receiver, does that, how much PT does that get you these days? So, I mean, that, I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek at this point, but Ohio State has done a tremendous job of recruiting the position. And just the fact that they said yes, I mean, to Boggs at this point, I mean, says something. So I think that people will be impressed by it. I think that we will see him go up in subsequent rankings once they go through film and everything else. And it's kind of what is the other group doing? I think once somebody finally makes the move, I think everybody else will follow in kind, just to kind of solidify their opinions.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see, like, we've talked about on the site a lot is, how does Brian Hartline do it again in 25 after what he's brought in 23 and 24? Who's going to sign up for that as a prospect? So you've got Boggs now. I like the in-state options. I particularly like Quentin Simmons at Withrow, but you got 3 or 4 guys out there in Ohio that you can take a look at. And maybe those guys will be a little more patient as far as not hitting the portal after 12 months. If they don't start as freshmen, you can kind of develop them. So if you do that, you're very much in it. Now I need to see him visit. And I've talked to Nation quite a bit. I've talked to his dad. They are both like big Brian Hartline fans, big fans of like Ohio State and what they're doing at receiver right now. But it is one of those things where it's like, okay, let's see you kind of like show up on campus a couple times. Let's make sure that's real.
Yeah.
But if they could get someone like that and Boggs, and then you get an Ohio kid, and then he's going to get some 5-star kid, whether it's a kid who's 5 stars right now or a kid who's not 5 stars right now, who becomes a 5-star, he's going to find someone else. And now you've got this monster receiver class again. And so it's just really impressive to me that they're able to keep doing this. And I know it's easy to say that when you're churning guys, you're churning a lot of guys 3 and out. Like, you're not blocking guys as long because guys are leaving for the NFL after 3 years instead of 4 years or 5 years. So you are able to kind of turn things over a little bit more quickly, and you're able to get those freshmen in there early, and then they play and they start as sophomores and juniors and they're off to the NFL. Like, he's got this kind of rolling almost machine-like right now. So that's helping, but just the trust that he's able to gain from these players that, yes, despite what I've recruited in front of you, I'm still going to develop you. You're still going to get your chance, your opportunity. It's a hard sell when you've got other schools out there, saying, well, that's fine, but you can play here from day one. And here's a big fat NIL package too. Like, you're recruiting against that too. And I'm not saying Ohio State does great in NIL, but like you're definitely going against schools who are promising big NIL dollars and immediate playing time. And you're still winning these national battles for kids who aren't located in Ohio anymore, or ever in many of these cases. So it's just, it's impressive. He's the best recruiter in the country, I think, at this point. Among assistant coach, we can talk about head coaches, I guess, but among assistant coaches,
You'd be
I don't think anyone's doing a better job.
There might be, like a D-line coach or something in the SEC that could, but I don't even know. You look at maybe one of the runs that Georgia had but that a lot of those were like, oh, well, you're just getting fat on D linemen out of the state of Georgia. So, you've got all of the toys down there and you're doing a good job of keeping them there. Whereas Brian Hartline is having to cast a wider net in terms of geography, but he's not having to cast a wider net in terms of numbers, because he can sit there and say, these are the 7 players I'm going to focus in on to land 3. And more often than not, he's going to get the 3 and probably have 2 that wish that they were part of the 3.
Yep. So we're going to do some updated. One thing I want to do this year, we didn't really do last year, I'd like to do that this year, is once the season's over, kind of everyone gets like their Huddle films together in like December-ish, sometimes January. What I'd like to do is eventually kind of go back through, and we do this on signing day for the seniors, but what I would like to do for like the 25s is, instead of going off sophomore film like we do for some of these commitment reactions, is kind of go back and revisit after junior film is posted in its entirety, and we can kind of go through everything. And so I'll try and remember to do that with some of these guys like Boggs, but let's get to the sophomore film. And I suspect it'll be kind of what I described.
Oh, I thought I cut all of that off. Apparently I didn't.
That's all right. So here again, he can line up at different spots. That was the one thing I did like about him early in the camp, is he looks like he's got the body type. He can play out of the slot, and that's why I'm doing the Smith and Jigba thing's been put out there. That's why I'm doing a bit of the KJ Hill thing too, though, because he can really do a lot of damage out of the slot. And there he is getting vertical out of the slot. There previously kind of a little out cut there.
Body control there, yeah.
Yeah, great body. But that's what I saw. A lot of this is what I saw at camp. He's not like blowing past people. Like, that's enough separation there, but he's not. You see some of these high school receivers, and they're 5-10 yards clear of these guys. He's not like blowing past people, but he's getting enough separation. He catches everything. He's got this incredible, ability to get his feet down on the sidelines or adjust his body if the throw isn't, made onto the correct shoulder. He's tough. He can make plays in the middle. There he is, a little bit off schedule or whatever you want to call it. He has to scramble, drill, whatever, find some open space. I think he is going to be a slot guy at Ohio State. I think that's where the caliber of athlete, like the Carnell Tate, the Jeremiah Smith, they're recruiting these like big time sprinters for the outside. So I think Boggs makes perfect sense in the middle of the field, where that's where his strengths are, just operating in space, finding these little creases, finding gaps, using his body control. He's a big, strong kid. He's not like 6'4", but he's built solidly. He's very tough. So he's not gonna run 4.3, but he's seemingly always open. And again, he has just housed some of the best teams in Florida this year. I mean, it's been unbelievable getting these, he's watching the Coco football Twitter feed every week, and he's making a one-handed catch, or he's doing, he's getting I think he had a 300-yard game recently. But he's having like these huge games against these like big time opponents. And so he's definitely one of the fastest rising kids in the country in 25, really among all positions, but especially wide receiver. And 25 is a pretty special class from a skill perspective. I've seen a lot of good receivers and running backs already. So it's going to be a good year, I think, for those positions. But I mean, that's one to get everyone caught up on the latest two commitments. There's another announcement coming on October 14th. I don't have a calendar from me. That's Friday. Or is it Friday or is it Saturday?
That's Saturday. So
it's Saturday.
Tom, Tony, and myself will all be at Purdue.
Yes.
You're going to.
Sunday's the 15th.
Yeah. Yep.
So Saturday, Blake Woodby, big time corner, 4-star corner out of Maryland.
St. Francis Academy.
Now, here is an interesting part about that. I have for years joked that I will need to see them get a St. Francis Academy kid to believe it. For those who don't know, he's not there anymore. He's the head coach at Charlotte. But St. Francis Academy was largely built by Biff Poggi, who is a huge Michigan guy. His son played at Michigan, went to Michigan. And for years, I've watched Ohio State try. And even if the kid doesn't go to Michigan, he doesn't go to Ohio State. And so I've kind of joked over the years to this point, been batting 1,000 on this, that I kind of have to see Ohio State get a St. Francis Academy kid to believe it, because it's even continued post Biff Poggi. I mean, he's left the program, but there's guys that worked under him that have been there. And it just seems like they cannot get, for a school that recruits so well in the DMV. Larry Johnson has had so much success at so many programs there. He's never been able to pull these St. Francis kids to Ohio State, that I've just kind of laughed it off. I talked to Blake over the summer. I'm like, we'll see. And sure enough, I've got them getting him. I've got them getting Blake Woodby. I think they're going to land him. I think Ohio State is going to land a St. Francis kid. Which makes me wonder, is he going to play at St. Francis this year? That's a joke. I'm joking. I don't have any information that would lead me to believe he's not going to continue his career at St. Francis next year.
He'll transfer to Mater Dei, where Ohio State also. We all believe they get one.
Right. But like, I think I might be about to see it to believe it. So that's where I'm going right now. We will, if he commits to Ohio State over the weekend, we will have a reaction show. We will talk about we will go through his video. But my hyper quick thing there is, and I'm going to say these guys' names, and it's going to be really unfair to Blake, but I'm trying to think of play styles here. He's not Jeff Okuda. He's not Eli Apple, Gary and Conley. Thinking of like all these like Malcolm Jenkins, like all these like 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2" corners, Chris Gamble. He is more in the Denzel Ward body type where you look at him and yeah, he's maybe an inch or two shorter than you'd love, a little skinny, but he pound for pound is as tough, as physical as it gets. And so I won't go Antoine Winfield. That's a step too far.
That's a lot.
That's a step too far. But there's some Denzel Ward there in terms of just fast, twitchy, athletic, quick, tough, can really, really hit, even though he's not a big 6'1", 195-pound corner. I love him. He was great at Under Armour Future 50. So win, lose, or draw, whoever gets Blake Woodby this weekend is getting a really good player. So we will have more on that. Kevin, do you have a prediction there?
I tend to like Ohio State in this one. I kind of feel the same way about St. Francis. I went through the list of just through a recruiting database of what Ohio State has landed out of there. And the only name that they ever landed, and then he changed his name, was Trey Avery, who never really did anything at Ohio State, ended up going to Maryland. I don't even remember what he changed his name to off the top of my head. So I'll believe it when I see it, but I think I'm going to have to start believing come Saturday.
And we are going to be, boy, are we going to feel like Charlie Brown getting the ball pulled out from us if we somehow predict him to Ohio State and he doesn't go to Ohio State after all we've said over the years about seeing it to believe it at St. Francis, and we finally pick a kid to go to Ohio State and we still get the what, fool me once, shame on you, fool me 35 times, shame on me, I guess. But
right.
I feel as good as I can about this, given the history there. I will say that, which means I can't be 100%, but I feel about as good as I would be willing to feel about something like this. Just from talking to him over the summer and kind of seeing what's happened since then and just following this throughout, the last 6 to 8 months. I think it does look good for Ohio State here. But that'll do it for today's episode. We'll be doing these weekly moving forward with the instant reaction shows as well as those are available. But hopefully we'll have an instant reaction show for you guys here after it. Not to like jinx this, but like, is it a little bit ironic that he's committing the same day Ohio State's playing at Purdue, another place that just for some reason, like, I don't think there's anything weirder in sports than Ohio State's record at Purdue the last 20 years. Is there any more lopsided? Like
since 2000, Ohio State is 3-5 there. Be sure to go to BuckeyeHuddle.com and check out my Tale of the Tape, which will be running on Thursday morning. I don't even know. And I've got all sorts of factoids from those games. And I will remind people though, that of those 8 games, 6 of them occurred either in the 1 year of Fickell or the Tressel era, really, or I guess a little bit of Cooper in there. And we were talking about a different type of offense and things of that nature. We'll see. Ohio State has a 56-0 win in there too, which is just makes it even more wacky that Ohio State's gone there, won 56-0, has outscored Purdue by about 30 some points in the series in these 8 games that we're talking about, and still has a losing record. So yeah.
So you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Saturday, Ohio State blows out Purdue and West Lafayette and lands a St. Francis kid in the same day.
I'm going to buy a Powerball.
Are you taking that parlay? Are you taking that two outcome parlay?
As long as I can money line the Ohio State win, yeah. Because I 19.5 points. I don't know.
Number.
I don't know. I mean, Ohio State backdoored last week against Maryland, so who knows?
Yeah. All right. So it's all the demons will be exercised on Saturday. That's my prediction. So we'll see. See you guys soon. Certainly on the post-game show. Check us out at about 3 p.m. We go right as the clock hits 0 on the post-game show. So we'll have coverage from West Lafayette from Kevin and crew. I'll be here getting the post-game show rolling until they're ready to take over. And hopefully we'll have an instant reaction show for recruiting purposes on Saturday as well. So thanks everyone for watching, listening, and we will talk to you again soon.